talk about Die Hard with a Vengeance.
For our own one? Sure, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So what'd you think? Is it the only Die Hard movie you've seen, or have you seen
Die Hard, I have never seen a Die Hard movie ever.
Man.
And then last night, my roommate I was just sitting on the couch, and my roommate turned on the TV and put on Die Hard with a Vengeance, and then I watched it. So, I have seen the Rick and Morty episode that parodies it.
Okay.
So I kind of know a little bit about the first movie.
Okay.
But just through that. So
that
it
feels
was
like
a wild experience.
That feels like such a bygone thing. The idea of just turning on the TV and and they're like, "Oh, there's a movie on. It's maybe like 15 minutes in. I'm just going to sit down and watch the rest of it." Like you used to be able to turn on like TNT and it would be like, it's Shawshank Redemption. I'm just going to sit and watch this for another 2 hours. But it's like no one has cable anymore, so you don't really have that experience of just turning on the TV and seeing something and sitting down and watching the rest of it.
And they always play the same movie twice in a row, so that way you can catch the beginning if you missed it.
They know when you're walking into the room and you're like, "Oh, this movie's on."
Yeah, so Die Hard with a Vengeance was, in my opinion, a Batman movie.
Okay.
Because you have the Riddler just doing all these like crazy terrorist bullshit and making them do riddles the whole time. And then you've also got the Bane Dark Knight Rises tactic of sending all of the police in the city to one specific location, so you can do a crime somewhere else. And that's what I was thinking about this whole movie. I was like, this is Batman. But of course, this movie happened first or before The Dark Knight Rises. But still, that was my thought.
There's a Riddler in this movie.
Yeah,
so that the bad guy is both, right? That he's the Riddler and
Bane.
Bane,
he does both. Yeah,
Jeremy Irons' character.
Oh,
have you not seen
wild.
Vengeance, Nick?
I have only seen the first Die Hard movie.
It's Hans Gruber's brother.
Yeah, I'm looking at the credits and it says Simon Peter Gruber.
Yeah,
So,
that's right, Simon Gruber.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wild.
And he plays a game of Simon Says.
That's right. Yeah, man,
that's
been a
very
long
Batman
time.
villain-esque.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a fun movie. Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson going back and forth was entertaining, and I would watch it again if it was on.
Yeah.
Or at least the beginning 30 minutes that you missed the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Nice.
I watched that recently, maybe within the last year and a half, and I had not seen it since it came out. I think it holds up, but its racial politics are really weird. If it came out, it would never come out today in that way.
Sure.
And also, it's like a response to, I don't know how old you are. You may not know this. The L.A. riots, Rodney King stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Back in the early 90s.
aware.
You can clearly see this black-white thing going on with those two guys. And yet, it's pretty, I mean, by our standard, not my standards, but anybody else's today, it's pretty offensive at times. Did you feel that way or not? Or could be seen that way?
I mean, Bruce Willis wore a sign that says "I hate," N-word.
Yes.
Oh,
He's made to wear
I've
that,
seen
right?
that. I've seen that picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how someone would think this movie was offensive.
Honestly, for like a 90s action movie, I think holds up but is a little racially charged is kind of the best you can hope for these days.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of best case scenario. At least the first Die Hard is just, racist against Germans, so nobody cares. That's okay. Cool.
Yeah, interesting. I've only seen the first one. Gotta watch the other ones now, I guess.
You should. Yeah, Vengeance is good. It's a good choice if you don't have access to the first one. it's the next best
yeah.
choice, I think.
I think the first one is essential because it's all this pop culture meme stuff, but then to me the third one is ridiculously stupid, and that's fun, and then I think that's the one to watch. So if that's the only one, then that's fine.
Yeah,
You should try number 2, because I rewatched that and I thought it was completely stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, but when I was a kid, I loved that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my taste changing. But
They've all got stellar like villains too, like Alan Rickman in one, William Sadler in 2. I love William Sadler, Jeremy Irons,
Yeah.
and then even Timothy Olyphant in A Good Day to Die Hard he's good. He's like one of the best parts about that. And I don't remember the last one because I hate the last one. I absolutely hate what is it? Or maybe that one's A Good Day to Die Hard. I don't know.
Why is that? I never saw that. The
Live
fifth
Free
one?
or Die Hard was 2007.
Okay, that's the one with Timothy Olyphant. I like that one, but not as good. But I still like it. But Good Day to
How
Die
many
Hard.
movies are there?
There's 5. There's 5 Die Hards.
Whoa.
Yeah,
And I saw the third one.
correct.
You did.
Awesome. Okay.
It's interesting that there are only 5, because usually when there's like a big franchise like that, or like a big popular movie like that, late 80s, early 90s, they pump out like 15 of those suckers. So it's sort of surprising
Like
that there's
Tremors.
only like Tremors.
Yeah,
It's surprising that there's only 5 and they're all spread out like almost like 10 years apart for all of them except like the first 2. I'm surprised
Yeah,
they didn't
really.
milk that series more,
Welcome back, ladies and gents, to There Will Be Duds. This is episode 109, and I am your co-host, TJ, aka J Spot Jack Cheese, and with me, as always,
As always, I am Nick, aka Dr. Funk on Twitch, and with me, as always,
Here I am. It's me. I'm Tommy, aka Moose, and I would like to introduce our special guest today.
Oh, Dr. Matthews. Sorry, Dr. Josh Matthews, Learning About Movies channel on YouTube. And you guys are a lot of fun, so I thought I'd join in.
sweet.
Oh, thanks.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
he hacked the podcast because of our unstable network.
Ooh.
Oh.
Well, I don't know like what turned me onto your channel originally, but the reason that like it kind of I was like, oh, maybe we should try him, just, shoot him a message and see if he's interested. Was we had just talked about on our show something. Shoot,
French
I just
Connection?
had it. The French Connection. I mean, yes, you did a video on it.
Edited French
Yeah.
Connection. Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, and it just kind of popped in my head. So, yeah, again,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I appreciate you, coming on for this. So, yes, Josh recommended a movie off of a list that I gave him, but he recommended a movie. And that movie is Network from 1976, directed by Sidney Lumet, sorry. It is about a network television company called UBS, and some of the kind of key characters, some of the executives, the people who run it, as well as a newscaster named Howard Beale, who at the beginning of the movie finds out he's going to be fired, so he announces on air that he's going to kill himself on TV in a week, and they're going to immediately can him until they find out that his news just got a huge bump in ratings, so they decide to turn him into a spectacle, and it becomes like the most popular television show on television. And then it also deals with some of the higher ups managing his character as he kind of spirals more and more out of control. And then there's a romance subplot between some of the characters too. And so I'll let Josh lead us in. Why'd you decide on Network?
Oh my goodness. It's such a great movie in a lot of ways. It's also dated. I'm I wonder if it's still applicable today, how much it's applicable, and if people, you're talking about TV in the opening and turning on TV and just seeing a movie come on. But I mean, how many people have had that?
Yeah.
Who are under whatever age 25 or 30 had that experience. So the question is this movie applicable to today? I had that in mind, but I do think it is. I don't. Just the basic sensationalism, the satire sensationalism of this movie is still really interesting, and really, and I don't think you need much prior knowledge to get it, even though there's a lot of dated stuff in it, like what's the ratings and the network share and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe people don't know that, but the relevance of this movie is it's still hanging around. I think if you watch it and you're young, you can probably see it
for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think watching it this time, I kind of because I've seen this a few times. I'm a big fan of it. Sidney Lumet is one of my all-time favorite directors. But like my take on it this time is more like just thinking more in that satire fantasy mindset where there's some assumptions that the movie makes where I'm like, or like there's some certain ways that characters act, like especially as it goes on and it gets more and more crazy, where I'm like, that's not exactly how the real world works, but I'm like, but I don't think this movie is necessarily trying to be. I think there is an element of fantasy, even though it is just, a TV network, just.
What do you mean?
Well, just kind of the general, the way that like how easily and how broadly the Howard Beale show takes over the world, and a lot of the commentary about like how news media and like television is what the Ned Beatty scene, you will atone, that thing.
Yeah.
And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?
Where he's saying like there's no nation, or like the nations are ABC and CBS and UBS and blah blah blah. And I'm not saying even literally in this that like there's no countries, but I think that rings more true, or that is more true in this than in reality. But I think like Josh said, that there is some like relevance to like even today about manipulation of the masses or whatever by news media. You can look at this and be like, wow, that's how like a lot of I can't think of what you call like the the big like Fox News, MSNBC, like those kind of like news channels kind of operate now. It's more sensationalistic than it used to be.
Yeah.
I also think of like I know I'm going on for a while here, but Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley's like debates on the Nixon Kennedy presidential race in the early, or no, maybe it was Nick. I don't know. One of the 60s.
Are you talking about the one where Richard Nixon was like really, really sweaty and looked uncomfortable, and like the
Gore Vidal called. I can't remember. Well, no, Buckley called Vidal. I can't remember what he called him, but it was something pretty nasty.
He called him. He said, "Now listen here, you queer. If you don't," but it blew up into this thing where he called, because Gore Vidal was. I don't remember if he was homosexual, if he was just kind of like...
Yeah, he was.
He was? Okay. He called him a queer... Like, they were doing like a debate, like it was supposed to be this, this was back when TV was more reformed, and,
sure.
only the elite smart minds talked on TV, and they were, using all these big words about the presidential campaign.
No one lost their composure and hurled insults.
Until Buckley called Vidal a queer. And then, boom. And now we have...
small domino. Bunch of big dominoes.
I would tweak fantasy. I would actually call this it's not science fiction, but it's getting there. It's speculative. So it's like, what if TV executives became like total pragmatic realists about the bottom line, and that, you know, they do anything to, you know, to make money, and therefore here's sensationalism. And I think then in '76 is like way more crazy than it would have been. Like clearly by the '90s we're not. It's not as. It's more par for the course.
Sure.
This is sensationalism, but this in '76 would have been like more speculative. Would they show suicide on TV? Would they show terrorist attacks? Right, like the Mao Zedong hour in this movie, which I find completely hilarious.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're gonna stage terrorist attacks, right, in order to get ratings. Yeah, like that, and then the end of the movie, of course, is wild. Yeah, and I think it's still wild. And what comes to mind, I think you mentioned in the episode I watched of you, one of them is Black Mirror. I mean, the Black Mirror is the science fiction, right? Because it's about the near future and speculative. But if you remember the first episode of, I don't know if you've seen it, season 1, episode 1 of Black Mirror.
That's one of my favorite episodes.
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Must, you know, that one.
Yeah.
You know, it's just taking this stuff and it's kind of the same kind of thing.
I haven't seen that episode.
Oh,
it's he's basically he's blackmailed into having sex with a pig on live television.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. What a way to start a show off.
Yeah.
This movie in some ways kind of reminded me of The Monkey's Head, in the way that it was like the opening sequence where it's like showing different like TV screens, then it ends with like the Viet Cong being shot in the head.
Oh,
that sort of like. That sort of satire, like that sort of desensitization of things like that, and it's almost like you know, in the beginning of the movie, literally as Howard is like talking about like shooting himself on TV, the dudes in the control booth don't even clock that he said it.
Yeah.
They're they're having a chat
That's
with each
great.
other, and you can see Howard on the screen, and he's talking, and they're just like kind of, you know, bullshitting and laughing. And someone was like, "Did you hear that?" And they don't even like, it doesn't even register until everyone is just like, "Hey, he just said he was going to kill himself on TV," and they're like, "Oh,
What do you mean you said it was going to kill himself on TV?
yeah."
I have decided to kill myself.
So what'd she say?
I'm going to blow my brains out right on this program a week from today.
10 seconds to commercial.
Oh,
Howard just said he was going to blow his brains out next Tuesday.
What are you talking about?
Didn't you hear him? He just said... Howard just said he was going to kill himself next Tuesday.
What do you mean Howard just said he was going to kill himself next Tuesday?
I love how that is played. How that whole thing, yeah, you see all the people hardly paying attention, and then like they're just able to like grab him right as they come back from commercial break, and he's being pulled away from the table. Yeah.
I feel like there are, you know, some instances of like that happening. Like I feel like there have been things on the news that have happened like that. Like very famously, there was like a woman who actually did do that. I think in like the 70s or something like that.
It was a few years before this, and it's what inspired the.
Did
Howard
it inspire
Beale.
it?
Her name is Christine Chubbuck. There's a movie about her with Rebecca Hall that's pretty good that came out a few years ago.
What happened?
Well, then you had even like Jack Ruby, you know, shooting Oswald
on TV.
I saw it on the TV. You know, there it is, and then let's just do it for ratings. And by the end, though, that's the interesting part. So let's do it to get rid of him.
Yeah,
right.
That ending is really interesting. The middle management trumps the higher management that wants to keep him in.
yeah, that is interesting. And also how like I was watching it with my wife Kalia, and they're like having this long conversation about like the logistics of like, you know, is it better for ratings if we murder this man or not?
Yeah.
And
Very
then
casually.
And then like later on in the conversation, somebody's like, wait a minute, we're talking about killing a person. And then they quickly just quash. And Kalia's like, yeah, nobody's mentioned that yet. And I was like, that's the point. I was like, they don't care. This is like the end of Animal Farm where, you know, we've killed Boxer, we've killed all the old rule, and, you know, the pigs are in charge now.
Yeah, I mean, there's like no body horror, but it almost seems Cronenbergian Maybe I'm just thinking of like movies like Scanners
that's right.
or Videodrome, but it's like if there's a little bit of body horror, I could easily see this as like a Cronenberg, like sort of dystopian. Like this seems like his wheelhouse of like.
No, you're right, because this movie spurred on all kinds of TV criticism, and Videodrome comes out like 3-4 years after this, and there you go.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and even like it's so quick when they kill him, but it's like it's violent. Like you see his body just like crumple and like shudder. It looks really like realistic.
I think it's funny how like at every episode of the Howard Beale show that they show us, he ends his monologue by fainting on the ground. and then he starts his monologue by getting shot and falling on the ground.
Yeah, that made me, cause it'd been a while since I'd seen this, and that made me laugh so hard the first time he does a speech, and then he like shudders, collapses, and then just the timing of the applause after.
And then the camera zooms in on him.
It's almost like the Eric Andre show.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
I feel like this falls into the category of movies that I've sort of made this point before with other movies, but it seems like the real villain all along was marketing. It's always the marketing is always the real villain, because the fact that instantly Diana was like, well, how do we do this again? And it's that same thing with like current brands, like especially brands that have like quirky Twitter accounts, like trying to achieve that virality after like going viral once. And it's like it's like lightning in a bottle. And it's like even after his second one, like they notice that it's like, oh well, it didn't do as well as the first one, and they're like, no, we have to milk this for as much as we can. It's like you can't force it. I also laughed very hard at like how many times they were tricked by Howard Beale, where like he'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll go back and I'll do it the right way, and he's like, okay, we'll let you have your send off. This whole thing's bullshit. And you're like, it's like they kept falling for it for some reason.
And then Max is that's a line that I wrote down, is just they're getting like calls, like complaints from viewers, and he's saying life is bullshit, and it is, so what are you screaming about? He slams the phone down. Yeah, the dialogue, the script is just really strong. I like that. I think Josh mentioned before that like the wordage that they use for, you know, it doesn't like skimp on like using a lot of terminology about like running the, you know, the business. You know, there's some words or terms that, you know, I don't know if I even get, but it's like I appreciate when like I'm okay with that in movies where like the writing is so tight and the direction is so like good, like the performances are so like well directed and everything, that like it doesn't matter if I don't get the technical stuff, because everything else is, you know, you still get it, you get the vibe. It's like I don't know what these words mean, but I know what they're talking about, or I know what this means for the characters. So yeah, but I could also see people just thinking that's pretentious. Like that's a very like Aaron Sorkin thing to do, which this is like one of his big inspirations, is this script.
Oh yeah,
totally. Yeah.
Who?
Aaron Sorkin. He wrote, I think his most famous claim to fame is like A Few Good Men or The West Wing, but he's also done like The Social Network.
Okay.
So yeah,
his stuff is very, very talky, very wordy. He's famous for like the walk and talk, where characters will like walk down a hallway and just have very quick banter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should add to that. This movie has 5 long speeches, 6, 8. I don't know. It's a lot of long speeches. When have you ever seen that in a recent movie? I was trying to think about that, but all of them hit, or all of them are kind of interesting. The Ned Beatty one, of course, is maybe the most famous.
Yeah, it might be.
Partly because of the way it's filmed. It's really interesting, and it's also supposed to be like I should definitely say this. Howard Beale's the mad prophet, right? But he's co-opted by the God figure, and but that's just becomes overt. Like he goes in the boardroom, and it's the Valhalla is what they call it, and then he sees, "I seen the face of God" or something like that.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of speeches in this, and boy, oh boy, that you don't get that much anymore at all. Even though you would have gotten it. When would you have gotten this? Like some Capra movies, but I can't think of a lot of movies that have long speeches.
Yeah, more recent. I mean, like,
I know. Barbie just came out this week. That has this. Here's what a woman suffers. How a woman suffers.
That's right. Yeah.
Like that point,
that's
moment where she gets right.
I did notice that when we were watching. I was like, this is like uninterrupted for like 2 to 3 minutes, and I feel like I think a lot of movies these days are cut very quickly, so that you never really get more than a few sentences before it moves around. But with a lot of these sequences, especially with Max and Diana, like in their apartment, there's like a few extended ones, and I really liked the sort of like breakup one near the end where he basically was like. The meta commentary of like, this is the part in the movie where like
this is the happy
audience
ending or whatever.
Yeah, this is the happy ending, and I get to go back to my wife and kids, and you're just like a black hole of like empty,
just really cold.
I was like,
yeah.
Well, it's like, even like during their sex scene, she's just talking about ratings and statistics and how she can try to pitch these shows and how she can get funding and like all of those things.
That her especially, since you mentioned like Cronenberg, she feels like so many Cronenberg characters. Like what's her name? Blondie from the singer from Blondie who is in Videodrome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just like characters being kind of just caught up in their ambition until that becomes like their entire thing. Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, and
even like Max's wife, when like he basically is like, I've been having an affair, like even her like tearful speech, I was like, just like, I don't know, it felt like career defining performances for like every person in this movie.
I think it was because she won an Oscar for this. And she's in it for like less than 5 minutes. That's like
really.
She's in like 2 scenes, and in one of them is where she says, like, "Hey Howard, you got to go to work," and then the second scene is that scene. And then Ned Beatty got a Oscar nomination for his too, but I don't think he didn't win it. But he's awesome.
Which one is Ned Beatty?
He's Arthur Jensen. He's the. You have what is the line? You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale. That's it. And then Faye Dunaway won for lead, and then Peter Finch won. And that's actually how I originally like checked out this movie, is because after Heath Ledger won for The Dark Knight, I just remember reading a little factoid that was like, he's the only like performer to win a posthumous Oscar after Peter Finch for Network, because Peter Finch died before the Oscars that he won. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I looked at it, and it was by Sidney Lumet, and I was like, oh, that's the guy that did. I watched this when I was in high school. I was like, that's the guy that did 12 Angry Men. We had 12 Angry Men on VHS, so I've like known that movie since I was a little kid, and I was like, I like that movie. I'll check it out. I was like, yeah, it's fucking great. And yeah, Peter Finch is awesome in this. I love how simultaneously like tragic but also hilarious Howard Beale is.
Yes.
Just like every time he's like rambling about, like, I think when he meets Ned Beatty is like he's like, so hello Mr. Beale, I've heard you're a madman, and then Howard's like, oh yeah, God told me, blah, blah. And he's like, yep, sure thing. Let's go to my office.
Good morning, Mr. Beale. They tell me you're a madman.
Only desultorily.
How are you now?
I'm as mad as a hatter.
Who is it?
No, there's another great one where I think it's after his second one, and they're like trying to get him to come back to the studio, and like he finally returns, and I think this is right before the "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it anymore" speech. But he's like in his pajamas, in his like coat, and he's covered and he's like wet from the rain, and like he walks in and someone's like, "How's it going, Mr. Beale?" And he says, "I must make my witness." And they're like, "Okay, Mr. Beale," like as he walks through the door.
How do you do, Mr. Beale?
I must make my witness.
Sure thing, Mr. Beale.
Just very
fucking
casually
guy.
like saying all of his crazy stuff, just like, "Oh yeah," or like like even when he's going to meet Jensen, he like walks through like the it almost looks like a bank, like this big marble staircase.
Yeah,
and he just
that's
like,
the
looks
scene I
around
was
and
talking about. Yeah,
yeah, just starts proselytizing in this big booming echoing room.
Yeah. Another little I guess trivia tidbit I learned that's a little it's morbid, but I still think it's interesting that like the "I'm mad as hell" speech, apparently they only did 1.5 takes of it because he was already suffering from heart failure, but Sidney did not know. So he got halfway through his second take and he was like, "I can't do this again." It's like he was too exhausted.
Wow.
And like I feel like, even if you weren't, having heart troubles, like there's so much like pouring out of him through that speech, and it goes on for so long that it's tiring. His whole performance
I feel
is
like
tiring.
Yeah, most of his dialogue he is like yelling it to like the masses. So it's like, yeah, I bet it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of talking about like the satirical nature of it. I felt like it holds up incredibly well, even though like network television isn't really what it is anymore. In the same way that like I feel like Doctor Strangelove, you watch that and you're like, oh yeah, things really haven't changed all that much. Like I feel like this movie is perfectly like the satire is still like incredibly relevant, and I've lost the original point that I was making because I was thinking about something else. But I think the satire in this is like a genius, where like I was watching it and I was like, oh yeah, this is like a 70s movie, but it feels like way ahead of its time. Especially with like the way that the media landscape has changed here, where it's like, you can scroll on TikTok or Instagram and like you get such a wide range of like cute animal videos, footage of car accidents, and then it's like another cute animal, and then it's like just death and destruction, and you almost become desensitized to it. And I think Howard Beale's message, a lot of the time I was like, this Howard Beale's kind of based. Like with his like his sort of like populist message, I was like, I can get behind this. And I think on some level he knew that he was like being exploited.
Yeah.
But he was like, I can't turn down a platform like this. So it's like I'll put on the song and dance, and I'll shake and I'll fall down for him. But I mean, it's like in the movie he gets meaningful change done. Like he stops the Saudi Arabia, like the Arab deal, like buying the thing, which like I don't know, I can't imagine something like that happening like now. Like you see someone on a late night news program, like the opening segment. I don't know if you've ever seen like the Clear Channel. I think it's Clear Channel. Whatever parent company owns all of the local news networks.
Okay.
Like I've seen videos before where it'll start with one broadcast and they're saying something, and then it'll put two and they're saying the exact same thing, and then it's like 50 and they're all, in America we live in a democracy, and it's like, oh, every single like affiliate news network is saying the exact same thing, and it's the news is like bought and paid for. So like a character like Howard Beale is timeless in that way. Okay, someone else talk.
No, that's great. I think he's co-opted, and that's part of the deal, is that he's the voice of populism, becomes just that instantly taken over by the powers that be, for the money-oriented managers. But also then this higher order guy who's a globalist No Nation guy, Ned Beatty. So, but it was interesting. You said you think that Beale knew, and yet you can read this movie like he's just crazy the whole time, or he's touched by God, or he's a little rational, or all three.
Yeah.
I watched it as if he's just nuts. You know,
Me too.
like the William Holden character says, he needs to be treated. He needs to.
I feel like that's the
psychiatric
realistic
care.
Yeah.
And that's one way to watch it. Is like they've put this nut job or crazy crank on TV, but he is saying things that are perhaps helpful. I just feel like it's dumb rage that's being co-opted.
Yeah.
And that's really a central point. Is like there's the powers that be can take over and make a show out of populism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't until it like cuts into their bottom line where they actually take it seriously and then kill him on TV.
Yeah.
It's just, up until then, look at this kooky, cute, crazy guy talking about, one network owning all the other TV stations. Oh wow, it's so quirky and quaint and clever, because I think, the American people are so that sort of like solidarity and mobilization doesn't really exist, because I think there's even a part where Ned Beatty's character is talking about like the death of the individual or something like that, where I'm probably
like
butchering it.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
But it's like they feel like it's safe to put that kind of stuff on TV, because even though like what he's saying very accurately depicts like the state of like the news networks and how politics works, I feel like in a way they know that like the American people even see that as like entertainment, and they do. Like there's like huge crowds, like lines to get into the showing because they want to see what's he gonna say next, and then he starts like actually talking about the nature of it, and they're like, hold up, we gotta kill this guy on TV.
Yeah.
Or they just like seeing him faint every episode,
Yeah,
The Mad as Hell line, which I have the Blu-ray, like it's sitting there on my Blu-ray, still mad as hell. He says when he first talks about that, he's not trying to start a revolution. He's just trying to get people ginned up into anger.
Yeah.
And then everybody goes outside and they yell outside the buildings. And I feel like that's part of the applicability of this still, is like supposedly the algorithms want to get you sensationalized, and especially the negative emotions are the, like fear and anger are the ones that drive a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
And I think, but he is not rocking the boat until he says, we're going to send telegrams to the White House about the Saudi deal.
Yeah.
And that's when the action comes. So that's when they want to take him out.
When he's actually pushing for like real thing to be done. Yeah.
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 Because even the Maoists, the communists in this are just co-opted, and they're not doing anything either. Everything is being controlled by this Ned Beatty entity until Beale starts gets the people to act, and that's what causes his downfall.
Yeah,
I think.
I was losing it at the scene where I don't remember her character's name, but like
Faye Dunaway,
like the sort of like almost like Black Panther stand-in character, like
I can almost think of her name. Yeah,
is that the female or the male? The Ahmed Khan is the male.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Where it's like they have this like meeting in like a smoky room, and they're like talking about like their shares.
Yeah,
it's like these supposed like communist activists are like, it's like well, I'll be damned if I'm not gonna get my 50% or something, like 26% on this.
Yep.
And it's like how far they've like fallen from their message.
Yeah, and then
it's like anyone can be co-opted, but it takes a true crazy person to like wriggle their way out of being co-opted.
You can blow the Seminole prisoner class infrastructure out your ass! I'm not knocking down my goddamn distribution charges!
Man, give her the fucking overhead clause.
Let's get back to page 22. 5, small a, subsidiary rights.
I don't know how many episodes in a row this is, but I think this is the part of the show where I reveal that I didn't really enjoy this movie that much.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was boring. Josh brought up all those speeches, and I was kind of like dozing off during some of them, and especially the one about how people who watch TV are all stupid and stuff, and it's like, if I wanted to hear that message for 2 hours, I would just call my grandma. And so I felt kind of talked down to at times, and also like it was kind of hard to follow. Like I thought the movie was about Beale, and then he wasn't in it for like an hour, and then and we were mainly following
Max and Diana.
Yeah. Thank you. And I was like, oh, this movie's about them. Okay, I got it. And then we switched back, and now we're talking about Beale some more. And then I don't know. I'm not as sophisticated movie lovers as you guys. I'm just a casual movie enjoyer, and this one was one that I kind of enjoyed.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's okay.
Yeah, I actually think that's reasonable. The William Holden Faye Dunaway romance in this does feel. I don't know. I want to cut it out. I want to see what this movie would be if it didn't have that in it now, because it feels like a '70s holdover where they're trying to make. There has these two typical characters. He's the romantic, as he says. She's the realist. The older generation of the older TV, and here's the newer generation of these sort of pragmatic, amoralistic people. And yet, I feel the strength of this movie is still the Howard Beale stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's like the stuff that people remember. I mean, I have seen the "I'm mad as hell" clip on so many like Watch Mojo videos. Like I've, I've seen it in like so many compilations of like best scenes in movies ever, like that kind of thing. Yeah. Where it's like I think they could have kept the romance in there somewhat, but yeah, some of those prolonged scenes where it's like, okay, yeah, it's dragging a little bit.
Yeah, and also I don't really understand, like, okay, I understand why Diana likes Max. She looks up to him. She studied him in college or whatever. But what does Max see in Diana except, oh, there's this young girl who wants to bang me? Like, is that it?
I think that's
the whole time?
kind of it.
Is that why he leaves his wife and says he's in love with her? Like.
Yeah, I think it's like
okay.
Well, I think it's like an aging thing. I think he's like near the end of his life. I think that scene where his wife talks about like, oh yeah, you get a little bit more vigor in the winter of your life before you die, and you're choosing to use it on somebody else, kind of thing. Where it's like he has not even a midlife crisis, like almost end of life crisis.
Well, dude, here's the thing. It is like late midlife. Dude, he looks like he's in his 70s. I checked, he's like 56 or 57 when this movie came out.
That's crazy.
This is 26 years. I don't know if you realize this, Nick, but this is the guy from Sunset Boulevard that we did just a couple episodes ago. And this was only 26 years after Sunset Boulevard.
Wait. Which guy in
He's the main character in Sunset Boulevard. He's Joe. The guy.
He's shocked by this. Yeah, I wrote that in my Letterboxd. They call him middle-aged probably 10 times.
Yeah.
and he's 57, William Holden is, and he does look like he's 70. Poster child for not chain smoking.
Yeah.
I think it's alcohol too.
Probably,
and that just bothers me to death. And of course, you would never have this in a movie today where it's almost mansplaining. It probably is, where this older character is talking down to moralistically the younger female about her flaws, and he never gets the comeuppance in this movie. But yeah, he is really old in this. It looks old. I don't want to look like that when I'm 57.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That kind of changes the movie a little bit, like that he's not actually super old.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I looked it up because I knew it was William Holden. I was like, okay, wait. This isn't that long after. I mean, it is a while after Sunset Boulevard, but I'm like, not that long. Like, but yeah.
Yeah. That's wild. Yeah, I did not even. I should have looked at his IMDb because, like, yeah, that's insane. I did not make that connection, like, at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
But also, I kind of like. That also feels like a 70s thing where, like, they used average, normal-looking people. Like, I feel like nowadays movies are all just, like, hot young people, like, all the time. unless it's like an A24 movie, and then there's just like random naked old people like places because they love doing that for some reason. But like, you know, seeing a movie like from the 70s where everyone is again like middle-aged and older and fairly like average looking, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like it's nice to see that in a movie sometimes. Or like romance movies with like I don't know, maybe it's just like my perception because I feel like people used to look older than they do now. Like you see a guy in his 40s, or you know, you look at someone William Holden's age now, and you're like, they don't look like a 70-year-old.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, or like my parents.
Well, Tom Cruise in Top Gun or Mission Impossible. You know, he's 60s.
I know, that's insane.
That's wild.
He's 60. Yeah. That's crazy. He's older than William Holden is in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I did like partway through this where it's like it's going from like scene of like old guy to old guy, and I'm like man, there's not. I'm like trying to think of like other movies that are like, you know, about a bunch of old guys that are like this good. I'm like, it's like this Grumpy Old Men. You know, this is Grumpy Old Men if they were like television executives instead of like fishers in the Midwest.
Yeah, the movie opens with the two guys. So he fired? I can't remember. I think he's going to be let go. It's 2 weeks notice.
Yeah,
right?
Max. Yeah, he like tells
and they're drunk.
him. Yeah.
And they're drunk, and then they're talking about stupid stories about falling off the bridge. I can't remember exactly what, but you know, these two old codgers, and this is the way of TV. That's the old way, and that's going away. So this new way is Howard Beale being crazy. Yeah.
To touch back on that too, I do think I like this time. I do like the take of like. I do think that he's just crazy, and I think that is that intent with that scene of Max saying like, "Oh, we need to get him help." Is like I feel like that is kind of the implied like real take is that he's just kind of losing it, and he really needs help, but nobody wants to get him help because that's not what gets ratings. But inversely, in this the fantasy speculative looking at it, I do kind of like the take that he is actually touched by God and that he's actually speaking that, and that like I think that's why that scene with Ned Beatty is so good too, because that look when it cuts to Howard after like partway through it, and he's got that like that's the same look on his face when he's lying in bed looking up at the ceiling talking to God. So it's like,
yeah, that's true.
I think he thinks there that Ned Beatty is like, oh, this is the God that I've been talking to the whole time,
which is wild.
Yeah.
And to add to that, on his show, they have this set, and it's got a cathedral window-like thing behind it. It looks like a stained glass window behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Yeah, like a church window. That's what I was thinking of.
Well, and he says like in his first rant about how like this isn't a religious thing, you know, and like the voice said to me, I'm not God, so who cares? But then like later as the movie goes on, it gets more and more like, no, actually I am like a cult leader, and this is my deal now.
Yeah. See the way that I take it is like, I feel like there's all these people pushing and pulling Howard where they want him, all the executives and all the audience wanting him. They're like, yeah, we want him to be this big like cult figure. But I feel like Howard is completely like ignorant of that. I feel like Howard at the end is basically the same as when he's doing his mad as hell speech. I think that he is like completely unaffected by the world around him. I think he just goes out there and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna just yell again. I'm just gonna yell at the screen for a few minutes and then I'm gonna fall asleep. And which is like kind of like why, like partly why I love his character so much, because he's just so unaffected, except by the Ned Beatty character. That's the one thing that gets through to him, because again he thinks he's talking to God or whatever.
Well, I feel like also Ned Beatty is like the only one who I think speaks to him honestly, Like, he's the only one who actually explains things how they act in terms that he can understand. Because I think everyone else Howard talks to, they're all so like inundated by like the bureaucracy and like the ratings and this and that. And Ned Beatty's like, there's no United States. There's no this. There is only ABC. There is only Exxon. And it's like, Howard's like, yes, I understand. This is like my language. Like, yeah, you are correct. These are the corporations that own everything. So I think that's partially why he sort of like is taken aback, because everyone else speaks to him in bullshit, and Ned Beatty, the face of God, like talks to him in his terms in a way, you know.
Yeah. But why did he want Beale to spread that message? I didn't get that. Because right now the world is controlled by a few corporations, and like they don't want you talking about that, you know.
Well, that's the show.
we found the one unanswerable question.
Why?
I don't know.
Okay? Is that what he is like explicitly asking him there? Is to be like, I want you to talk about all this stuff that I'm telling you? Because, I mean, he does then go and kind of like talk about it, and that is what starts to make his ratings dwindle again, right? Because they're like, oh, now people are getting bummed out because he's saying all this stuff.
It's too depressing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I never really thought of that as him saying like, yeah, I want you to talk about this. But maybe the implication is that he's like, well, I know this guy just talks about whatever, so if I tell him this, he's probably going to talk about it on his show.
Well, he also says, I want you to spread this evangel, you know, like.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, he does.
This is the gospel I want you to preach.
Yeah.
And oh, I just lost it. Where'd it go? Oh well.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure like what his long game is. I mean, obviously, like the more he talks, the more the ratings go down, or it could be to just again desensitize people to it. That like, oh yeah, that's just thinking, you know, I'm flipping through the channels. That's just another thing I hear on TV. Like, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, click next channel.
Yeah, well, he cares a lot about the message because, like, even though he's losing money on it, he wants Howard Beale saying it.
Yeah, well, that was before. Yeah, because I guess he still doesn't want anything done with him. So that is true. Maybe the thinking is that he is so like he's like one of the top brass, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's like he's so disconnected from the common man that he's like he just thinks of that message as like gospel in the sense of like it doesn't matter if it's like telling people the truth about like, you know, the seedy underlying like how the world works. It's the truth and people need to know it. So people like I think Jensen Ned Beatty looks at it as like, yeah, people need to know this, so then they bow down to me. You know, they bow down to their executives. So he says, yeah, I want you to preach this evangel because it's his gospel. So it's like,
I'm in charge, and people like me, and you can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't look at it as like, oh, people, you know, as like how people would actually look at it as like, this is depressing and whatever. He looks at it as like, yeah, people are gonna shape up and, you know, start respecting and whatever. So there you go. Took us a minute, but got around to it.
One question: what did you make of the ending? I don't know if you paid seriously close attention, but he's assassinated. I should say murdered, because assassination is murder. But then it cuts to 4 different screens.
Yeah.
And you see a couple of them, he's dead. But one is a commercial for Canada Dry, and then they have another commercial come on. I know what you made of that ending. To me, that was a really fascinating choice for the ending. The last couple of minutes, or maybe less than that.
Were you asking Moose or just any of us?
Anybody.
Okay. My take is that it's just like, it's there, it's the main focus, but then like all other, news stories, it just gets washed away, and it, it's just any other thing on television. So then it's like, okay, now we go to commercials, and maybe next week somebody else will die, but and then TV will continue, and maybe more people will get killed on TV, or maybe other more like fucked up things will happen, but it's good ratings, so here's some more advertisement. Give us money, please. That's kind of my take, at least.
Yeah, and I also thought, again, it was part of that sort of desensitization, where you're just like, oh yeah, someone just died on TV. Be sure to drink your Ovaltine. All right, yeah, I'll watch this next commercial.
Yeah, commercials are how they get paid, right? So
yeah,
it's like the ratings uptick from like having the live murder is like surrounded by these commercials that's giving them the money that they were after the whole movie, so it's like the executives won in the end.
Yeah. And it's like any news, good or bad, as long as and that point is like basically hammered in. Any eyeballs on it, regardless, are like a good thing. People are watching.
Yeah.
Like last year or 2 years ago now, during like the Oscars, as soon as I saw on Twitter that like Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, like we stopped what we were doing and like we tuned in.
Yeah.
Or you think of like the Super Bowl with like Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, like Nipplegate, all that kind of stuff, where it's like, yeah, they got slapped on the wrist from like the FCC, but they probably had so many people watching that, and it was like such a, they could run news stories about it days after it happened.
Yeah,
where it's like, no matter what, how can we positively spin this? How can we turn this into a marketing thing?
Yeah, so I think to say that news is entertainment is really, I mean, the strong point in this movie is really interesting, because I think people used to think of newspapers or the Walter Cronkites of the world as like, okay, this is information being given to me, versus it being something that is keeping me fascinated and interested. And the news becomes, and this, it's not just TV shows where people die, right, when car crashes happen, but the newscasters become characters, they become entertainers. And
yeah,
I think that's in 76 that would have been the really sharp point here. That's less so today, but that the new, and then there's, I don't know if you've seen this movie, I just absolutely love it. It's Nightcrawler from about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Gyllenhaal. Because then you get that, and that takes that premise and then just adds to it and says, well, then the news has all kinds of warrant, and they're going to create disasters. And that's what happens in that movie, is that he creates stuff that causes news and that drives ratings. And they're almost getting there with this movie. I'm not sure they quite get there, but almost.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for a movie that existed when like the 24-hour news cycle really wasn't a thing yet, or like it was probably like in those early steps of like converting news from information to entertainment, I think to be able to call that out in 76 before it all happened was like insane. That like he basically predicted how it's going to be. Obviously not as like controversial as like live murders or live any sort of stuff like that, but I was like listening to some podcast, and it was like someone was talking about visiting like Fox News, or like they were shooting something, like they were doing a show where they needed to shoot inside like a news headquarters, and they went to Fox News, and they went in and saw like Bill O'Reilly and like all the old big Fox News guys, and they were all like in chairs like doing makeup, and they had like the TVs were on, but they were all muted. And I think the story goes, it was like one of Obama's States of the Union, and they were basically getting prepped to go and give their response, and all these like big wig talking heads on the program were like in their chairs being made up, and then as soon as they were done, they went and they just started ranting about the speech that they didn't even
listen to it.
Didn't even listen to or watch. Like the TVs were muted, they were in makeup, and then they sit down and it's like, wow, the socialist in chief, and it's like they didn't even listen to the speech like whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's almost like like obviously those guys suck. Like Tucker Carlson sucks, Bill O'Reilly sucks, but it's like you almost start to wonder if any of it is even authentic, if anyone actually believes anything that they're saying, or if it is just ratings and playing. Like I play a character on TV.
Fox News, I think, is like, I heard somewhere, is like legally classified as like an entertainment company as opposed to a news company. And that's how they get away with a lot of shit. And it's like that's literally what's going on.
And they're like the #1 news network too. Like they are consistently, like their ratings are way higher than like everyone else. And it's because it's like something that your parents turn on to get outraged about. It's like constantly just feeding those like dopamine centers, like negative dopamine. I don't know what. There's probably a scientific term for that.
Nopamine.
But it's just some dopamine. you get so mad until you just say nope, can't watch it anymore.
Well, I mean, I'll recommend again alongside Nightcrawler, that Christine movie. It's kind of like an inverse take, but like, and I don't know how much of this is like based in reality, or like, I mean, how much of it is like how accurate it all is. But it's basically like the movie implies that she was just like depressed or bipolar or something. But also, the news channel that she worked for, that she was a news broadcaster for, was basically, it was kind of like Nightcrawler, but if Jake Gyllenhaal was like the only one who wasn't obsessed with ratings, because it's basically like everyone in the her channel is like, yeah, we need to push for like more violence, more whatever, everything. But then she's like, no, I don't like doing that. I like talking about my stories. And then I can't remember exactly, but her last, like her final words on air, she said something like, in keeping with channel news whatever's leading fascination with blood and guts, we give you your an on-air first attempted suicide. And then she shot herself.
Wow.
It's really intense. The movie's really intense too, but Rebecca Hall is like really good in that movie. So recommend it. It's not the car one. It's not the Stephen King Christine, but it's but yeah. So yeah, those, I just like, when I'm watching Network, I'm thinking of Christine and Nightcrawler, and then when I'm watching those, I'm thinking of the other two, and you know, those are kind of the big ones. Yeah.
Just a really depressing night of shows of movies about news.
Yeah.
Well, what do we think? Got anything else? So we're ready to move into ratings?
I'm good to move to ratings if you guys are.
I'm fine. You can cut this out, but no one mentioned Robert Duvall. That's probably my sin.
Oh my God,
Robert
Duvall. Anything that Robert Duvall's in is fantastic.
Yes,
he's one of my favorites.
I agree. That was something I was slipping at. Yes, I'm also a big Robert Duvall fan. I love that he was just like, he's the executive who says
Hackett.
"son of a bitch" a lot.
Okay.
Like,
bald guy.
Son of a bitch to. Yeah. But
Yeah,
he's
it was kind of hard for me to keep track of all of those guys.
okay. Robert Duvall. I'm trying to think of something else you might know him from. Have you seen To Kill a Mockingbird?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, The Godfather.
The Godfather.
No?
Yeah, that's another one. Yep.
I just saw him in. He plays the old man in The Road. I just watched that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's in Jack
He's like
Reacher,
82 now.
I think he's like I think he's in his.
No,
90s,
you're right.
Or he's really
yeah.
close to it.
He's still kicking.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a treasure. I love that guy. So yeah, no, keep it. We need to have a special Robert Duvall shout out. So.
Yes.
Okay. Who wants to start us off? Do you want to, Josh, or I can? I know what I'm giving it. So.
This one's tough because there's a part of this movie I don't like. I really don't like the William Holden character because I think he's the moral voice of the movie, and yet there's no criticism within the movie. I can criticize him myself, but I don't find that. I think he's supposed to be the moral center of the movie, and I don't think he's likable to me. So
okay.
I would at times this is a 10 for its influence, its prediction. It has there's so many ways to watch it. but then there's like 30 minutes of the movie where I'm like, I don't know if I wonder if this were gone, what this movie would be like. So I think it's like, also I think this movie would be interesting if it were more interesting to me if it were in black and white, because it's got the 70s color scheme. It looks so dated. Now that may ground it in the 70s reality, but if this were black and white, it would be really interesting looking.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because my wife, I mean, I kind of have this bias too, but I was like, after we finished, I was like, well, did you like it? And she's like, yeah. She's like, you know me, I don't really like how 70s movies look. And I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. And there's something about the palette from it. Yeah.
I mentioned Dr. Strangelove earlier. Dr. Strangelove feels incredibly like tight and like prescient.
The reason 12 Angry Men will 12 Angry Men will feel more timeless. That's always gonna feel more timeless just because of the black and white. That helps it tremendously.
Yeah.
So you're going with a 10, or was that like a?
I would put like an 8.5.
Okay.
Do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
okay.
Like that. Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree that it's like 10 for like those reasons, but I also agree that there's like a little bit that I don't gel with, but I think it like, and most of it is that relationship too. I just think it detracts just a little bit less for me, so I went with a 9. Because like I even wrote down in my notes, so like, yeah, the romance subplot is kind of unnecessary, but I don't mind it too much because you still get some like good performances. You know, you get some, you know, some more the like the sex scene that someone mentioned where she's just talking about ratings. There's still like moments in it that I enjoy. So like for that reason, I am okay with it, even though it does seem a bit superfluous or something. And the big thing that did bug me about like kind of what you were saying about William Holden not getting a kind of, would you say like his ending, he doesn't get not punished, but you know, it's just the movie just kind of lets him get away with everything.
Yeah, he's the moral critic of her, even though he's been a scumbag with his wife and kids. Right. You know.
Yeah. And the bit that I got hung up on this time is that ending speech. As much as I do like the meta commentary was like, oh, and now, you know, here's the good ending. I get to go back to my wife and kids. And like my immediate thought was like, are you sure? Are you sure you're going to get to go back to your wife and kids? And it would have been really nice to have some sort of like post like scene with him where like you don't have to see him going back there, but you know that she didn't take him back or something like that. That he's just kind of left out. I think that a little scene with that or some little context of that would have just been like the perfect way to end that subplot to me.
Give him didn't that happen in Sunset? No, was that in Sunset Boulevard where like the girl walks by and like does not choose him?
No, you're thinking of
Miller's Crossing again?
Crossing. No.
Well,
yes, that too.
I think what you mean.
The third man is what
you're right.
Of, yes.
Damn, I wish I was.
Which was also just like the ending of Miller's Crossing. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, after that embarrassment. I think I'm also at a 9. I really enjoyed it. I really loved like the satirical elements of it because that's something that I'm interested in, especially regarding like the current media landscape and how media affects people both positively and negatively. And you know, it even though it's like a 1976 movie, a lot of it feels very current in like you know, audiences and you know, one corporation owning everything. Like basically Disney owns everything now. I mean, we constantly complain about streaming services on here, or at least I do, but like that's an I mean, you know, case in point, we went to go watch Mad Men and it was off Amazon Prime. So like I had to like digitally purchase season 2, but it's just like everything is out of your control. It can shift wherever it wants. They do whatever they want. And I don't know, that's just really interesting to me. So to see a movie like that. Is that
making you mad as hell?
I am. Yeah. I'm about to like, you know,
take it anymore?
open up. Yeah, I'm gonna open up my slider and yell out to my parking lot of my apartment complex.
And somebody will just tell you to shut up.
Shut up, nerd. Yeah. But yeah, no, I even like the relationship, like we were saying, it's like kind of like but I feel like even during their relationship conversations, you still kind of get that they're still, because she's constantly talking about the news and ratings, so it's not like just ooey gooey silly romance kind of stuff. Like, it's still kind of on point, even though you could make this a Titan ID and it would probably be just as effective.
Sure.
So 9.
Okay. Here I come crashing the average again. Yeah, I'm gonna give this movie. I'm looking at the little ratings breakdown that TJ made, and to me this was an average movie. 5.
Okay.
I think it's the. I don't know. I was really turned off by the thing about how people watching TV are stupid, because I'm a person who watched a lot of TV when I was growing up, and I take personal offense to that. And
well, I hate myself, so every time I hear them talking about that, I'm just like, yeah, you're right, I am stupid.
Yeah, every time there's a new technology, people get upset about it, and like there's good and bad with every new thing, and to talk about TV like it's somehow worse than books or whatever is just not like. I saw a meme or a comic one time. There were a couple of monks, and one was like, "Hey, check this out! It's called a book. You don't have to roll the scroll anymore." And so the guy reads the page, and he's like, "What do I do now?" Like, and then now you turn the page, and he's like, "Oh, this is stupid. This will never catch on." It just kind of, when I see an old man yelling about kids these days, that's just kind of. I just kind of get bored and stop enjoying myself. Okay. And it was kind of hard to follow all of the, because they were shouting a lot of people's names, like, oh man, Hackett's gonna be upset about this, and then Lindorf or whatever the guy's name is, and it's like I don't know who these people are, and then you introduce them like, okay, if that's who that is. I mean, it had funny parts. I laughed some. That was cool. That's why it's not getting less than a 5. And also, and like you guys said, like, it's an important movie. Okay, sure. It has it predicted some stuff. I don't know. I don't watch movies because they're important. I watch movies because they're fun to watch. And this one was just a 50-year-old movie that didn't really click with me.
Okay,
sure,
fair enough. Yeah, the one like, I guess, thing I would say is that how I feel like Howard's rants they don't feel generational to me. They feel more universal. I didn't feel like it was like an old man yelling at the younger generation.
Even the stuff about everything coming from the tube.
Not necessarily. I don't.
I mean, replace it with phone or whatever current media that, like, the way that people consume things. I feel like it's still fairly applicable.
Yeah.
Although I will say, like, news like that doesn't, because like the people that are watching like news like CNN, Fox News, MSNBC tend to be people with cable subscriptions, which tend to be people our parents' age. I think with our generation, we are much more selective about how we get the news, and there's like way more avenues that we have at our disposal. So
sure.
I'll concede a little bit to that.
Yeah. But beyond that, never apologize for having a different opinion than us, Moose. I value your perspective and spot in this show greatly.
Shucks.
I like that we're not all snobby film guys.
Yeah. We need the voice of the people here on this podcast.
Yeah. Howard Beale, there you go.
Except for when I liked that one French prison movie and you guys hated it.
I don't think we came at you.
No, you didn't.
We came at the guy that recommended it, but
that's right.
Then yeah, the meat and potatoes, or the
real reason that we're all here,
and the Oppenheimer. Yeah. Yeah. Before we get into that, have you guys heard about the new? There's already a new Barbieheimer, a new like 2 movies coming out on the same day that people are planning for.
What is it?
It is. I cannot get over the pun. It's the new Saw movie, and Paw Patrol. So people are calling it Saw Patrol.
Oh, jeez.
Is that real? That does not sound real.
They're both coming out on the same day. Yeah.
That rules.
So I was like, I guess I need to catch up on the Saw movies and Paw Patrol so I can watch Saw Patrol. But yeah, but so 3 out of 4 of us. So we'll try to refrain from too many spoilery things for some. Watched both ends of Barbieheimer. I don't know if we want to like this is in our post chat. It's a bit less thorough, I guess. This is just kind of our wind down thing, so we have to break down both movies completely. But I had a good time. I did do the back-to-back viewing of both, and I actually really.
Which one did you watch first?
Which one was first?
Barbie. It's Barbieheimer,
Okay.
but also I was just kind of going off of like what times works best at my theater, and that was the smallest gap between the two. But I really enjoyed the experience. It felt like the first time in a while, and maybe it was because it was like it's 5 hours total plus the previews, a little bit of wait time, like 6 hours, we'll say. So I just got to like get swept away in the magic of movies for like half a day, and it was just fun. I had a really good time. I really enjoyed the contrast. I know it's just a meme. It's not like these movies were made together like some like weird Radiohead like concept album or something like that. But
I will say so we saw Oppenheimer today, and Barbie was playing in an adjacent theater. And
hear it.
I'm conspiracy brain now. It's almost like putting Dark Side of the Moon with Wizard of Oz or something. So near the end, so there's a part in Oppenheimer where he's talking to President Truman.
Yeah,
and he's like, I feel like I have blood on my hands, and I swear to God, it cut to Cillian Murphy, and in the Barbie movie, I heard, what was I made for? I was like, whoa. So it was just really funny because like that scene in Oppenheimer, I don't think has any music playing, but I could hear the Barbie. It was like kind of this somber, melancholy track, and I'm like, I'm picking up what they're putting down.
I just realized the better reference point would have been Dark Side of the Rainbow, like
do
one with the others like soundtrack or whatever.
You watch Barbie backwards and Oppenheimer forwards, and they meet in the middle. And it's,
like Memento.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah. Chris Nolan. Yeah.
It's interesting that you said that feels like he has blood on his hands. That's an interesting take. So like, I study nuclear physics, and part of the grant that funds my research is I have to go to the national labs every once in a while and watch their dog and pony show, like, hey, come work for us, we're so cool. And I tried to talk to some of the people there and say, like, how do you feel about the fact that you're creating weapons of mass destruction? And I've gotten some different takes. From like the older generation, it's mainly people saying like it's a job, I do some interesting science and then I get paid and then I go home, and they don't really think about it. And then there was a younger guy who had this sort of like more convoluted way of thinking about it. I would say subtle, but I think it's crazy. So I'm going to say convoluted. The types of measurements that we make and go into the data that we get goes into simulations, and those simulations are used instead of actually like detonating nuclear weapons and testing them. So really, because he's doing this work, fewer nuclear weapons are being detonated, which is good for the environment and for the world.
Unless this is an Ender's Game situation, and like they actually are like for real killing people, but they're just making you guys think it's a game or whatever.
However, God, yeah.
I had lunch with a weapons developer who was very excited about his job. He was very proud to be the kind of person who develops weapons and designs them. He was so gung-ho about it, and it was really creepy. I like lost my appetite. And so it's interesting that Oppenheimer was portrayed as feeling some sort of guilt about it.
I mean, you'd have to just watch the movie. It's not like it. He definitely has like a change in like his perception or his feeling about it, like over the course of the movie. And it's in very Christopher Nolan fashion. It takes place over like multiple points of time. Like it's like when he was in college, and then when he, pre Los Alamos, and then post Los Alamos, and then like 10 years after, and his ideology does change from time to time. And also there's a huge cast of characters. Like so many fucking people are in this movie, and so many are like named characters, and so you kind of get a bunch of different, you'll probably like amongst like the couple dozen people who are like named characters at Los Alamos, you'll be able to like pick out people that you've had lunch with and be like, oh yeah, that's that guy. And then, there's a bunch of different kind of, people who are like after the Trinity test, they're like, sweet, that was awesome, cool. And then, people more like Oppenheimer who were like less so. But yeah.
They have a scene in the movie where I don't know that this was real. This happened. I'm not sure, but they watch or they look at a slideshow of a Nagasaki Hiroshima pictures showing the aftermath, and like here are these people who had stripes burned onto their skin and things like that, and that's part of the regret. But then there's an awesome scene. I think my favorite is when he is giving a speech in front of a bunch of roaring patriotic nationalist types. Yeah.
That is really cool.
And he Nolan cuts a sound out there, and he's just hearing, and it's blurry, and it's really great. It's really well done, and I think that's part of the beginning of this regret, which Oppenheimer kind of had, but then he was he was trying to stave off the hydrogen bomb development, and then have peace talks and all this, and but yet the U.S. was escalating, etc. And so that's part of the regret thing, I think. I'm not sure he actually regretted Hiroshima and Nagasaki specifically, though. I don't remember that being a real thing, but just the proliferation of bombs, I think he did not like that.
Yeah, I actually watched, after I watched the movie, a couple like late interviews of him, like in like the mid 60s, and it's like he does use like some of the dialogue in Oppenheimer feels kind of networky, where it's like, man, it's so technical and they're using all these words, but then you watch an interview with Oppenheimer, just like that's how he talks. He's a very like cryptic, elusive person. And like the way that like one of the interview questions is like, do you think that was the right decision? And he just like goes on, he's like mumbling, and to me it sounds like a guy who's like really wrestling with his conscience, and then he just ends it by saying, at this time I don't really have a proper answer for that question.
I feel like that's the wrong way to ask that type of, because it's like it is so insanely complicated, and it's like if you weren't there at the time, I suppose it's harder to, like in retrospect, you can see footage of what happened and the sort of long lasting effects that it had on Japan and the people of Japan. So it's like it's easy to be like, well, was that the right thing to do for real? It's like 20 years after it happened. I don't know.
Although what I was disappointed in the movie is that they talk They don't tell you how many people opposed the bombings when they happened, including all kinds of U.S. military elites, like Eisenhower, for example, saying it's too much attacking civilians and such. And so in the movie, they don't talk about Japan unconditionally surrendering, which is what the U.S. wanted. They just say they won't surrender. Well, they would have surrendered just on some negotiated terms, and that and they'd already been firebombed insanely. Most of the city's been firebombed. So I thought Nolan was it felt like he actually was arguing for the bombing somewhat, but then you get later in the movie and then he's worried about, as I said, the proliferation of nuclear weapons. The ambiguity of the movie is really palpable. I thought that was pretty interesting. It's hard to, like the nuclear physicist people, it's hard to know whether they should keep doing this stuff or not.
Yeah, and I think that kind of the ambiguity of the movie is kind of like just following Oppenheimer's own like feelings about the thing, like how he becomes kind of like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't make as many of these or make bigger ones, even though beforehand he's like, yeah, hell yeah, quantum mechanics, this is really cool. And yeah,
well, that's like
with a biopic, there's always like dramatization and fictionalization, but
yeah,
I think like given the context of like what you can know about this kind of mysterious like at one point most famous person on the earth dude, I don't know, I enjoyed the take or the way that it handled his character arc. I'm trying to think of a different word, but that.
Yeah.
Were you gonna
Barbie.
say something? Oh yeah.
Oh well, no, I was just gonna say that was that was kind of like his central conflict almost, was just like he was gung ho about it in like the theoretical sense, and then as it became more and more of a reality, I feel like you got more scenes of like those silent scenes where it was just like, or like the way that they even before that speech scene, the way they showed like the people stomping on the floor, like they showed that well before like that actually happened. But it was just like it's almost like a ringing in his ears.
And I meant to say, like, we're talking a lot more about the person Oppenheimer than the movie itself, but like I do want to say from like Nolan's standpoint, this is easily my favorite one of his since like Interstellar, probably.
Okay.
I'm not like a lot of people are saying it's his best. No way it's his best, but it's my favorite of his in a few, and
what would you say is his best?
I mean,
I'm always curious about a question because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Can I choose
I would
one?
Say, top 3 is in no particular order. Memento, Dark Knight, The Prestige. Those are probably my top 3. The only one of his I have not seen is Following, which I'd like to. It's just it's the hardest one to get a hold of.
It's on Criterion.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That's how I watched it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. It was fine.
Yeah.
It's almost like his Hard 8, where it's like you kind of see flashes of it. What's cool about Following is that it was him and his brother who wrote it, and I think he was early enough in his film career that like he didn't have permission to shoot in a lot of places, especially like public places, because it was a very like run and gun amateur production. So I think there were scenes where like when they got scenes of like characters walking outside and like in like a marketplace or something like that, like on the streets, I'm pretty sure they just like put the camera in a paper sack or some sort of like sack and walked around with the camera, and then it like that's how they got exterior shots of like outside stuff. So it's kind of cool. I think Memento is my favorite. I think your top 3 and my top 3. I don't know. I saw The Prestige recently, and I was a little bit more mixed on it. Yeah. But Memento and Dark Knight are, and maybe Memento, Dark Knight, Inception Inception's really, really good.
So like technically just amazing.
Yeah,
And
it's a cool movie.
And that's what I wanted to kind of touch on with Oppenheimer is like, apparently, and I watched an interview where he gives a very vague answer to it, but like they made the explosion, like that's real. They actually like made some, they detonated some explosive that made a mushroom cloud and all that, and then all the sort of like Tree of Life-esque, like the close-ups of like, the particles like popping and like all that was very like
I think it was practical.
It was more like, dopamine like triggering, like all the sound design I really liked, which is nice after like people have complained. That's been like a common complaint with like his last handful of movies is like, oh, the sound mixing's bad, you can't hear anybody talk. But there's scenes where there's like, like rumblings, there's music and people talking. It's like, I can hear all of this and it sounds so nice. And then I guess other things is just, I thought the acting was really great. I loved Robert Downey Jr. in it. He was probably my favorite performance, although Cillian Murphy was great too.
Again, so many just wild. Oh shit, it's that guy.
So
shit, it's that guy. Like it was insane.
Yeah.
I gotta give my Nolan. I'm totally different than you. I'm Dunkirk. I think that's a fantastic movie.
Okay.
I mean, that's my favorite of his.
I need to watch it again. I know, but
I haven't seen it. So.
Oh.
It's so much tighter, and what's the message of it? But then Oppenheimer, I just feel like that's the kind of spectacle he wants to make.
Sure.
In Inception, the Inception thing, but Oppenheimer, there's a lot of details there. You really have to pay attention. It's really I think he's gone wrong not using a smartphone because he, supposedly claims he doesn't use a smartphone, etc. most of his audience is I don't know that they'll keep up with. I'm speculating, but with Oppenheimer's like turgid details, that's the thing I've been harping on. Is so many characters, so many things. Actually, the heart of the movie and the biography it's based on is Oppenheimer said something in 1940s that he's getting called out in 1950s on, and it's real lawyer-like it's phrasing, and it just goes by so quickly in the movie you can't tell, but that's what he's getting harangued over. And I don't feel it's that clear in the movie, and usually Nolan wants to repeat everything over and over 20 times so you get it.
Yeah.
So that if you have a 50 IQ and you're eating popcorn, and that you can get it, which is Inception for sure.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's like that's kind of why I'm planning on seeing this again, and I'm hoping I can see it in the 70 millimeter, because I just saw it at the local theater, but I really want to see the 70 millimeter IMAX. So that's like kind of my other excuse is like, well, yeah, I got to see it in IMAX now, right? But also because like that was what I wrestled with the most, was the frame story of the the 50s, like his indictment hearing, and then the thing with Robert Downey Jr. They were approving him for like the board of something or other, and the first like 2/3 of it, basically everything before the Trinity test, I was like, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that stuff in the 50s. I'm like they think he's like a communist, but that's not exactly what it's about. And then the final hour, everything after the test, and it's you get they're like you realize what they're talking about. I was like, okay, great. Now I'm like, okay, now I need to watch it again, knowing what that is, and I feel like I would enjoy all that stuff in the first two acts a lot better. And it's like I do get a little like sometimes with movies where it's like, well, you shouldn't have to watch it, that's like not a good excuse if like you have to watch it twice to get it. If it's not like some sort of like surrealistic, like if it's like not an art house movie, if it's this is just supposed to be a biopic, right? But you gotta watch it twice to know what's going on. But I enjoyed like technical aspects of it, performances that I'm like, I'm very happy to go give it another go. See if
you like that better than Barbie?
Honestly,
would you rather rewatch that one or Barbie?
Yeah, if you
He
watch
had to
Barbie a
choose.
second time, you really start to pick up on the subtext of the patriarchy and
Talk about unnecessary subplots. And I did like Barbie, but I felt like Will Ferrell was like so unnecessary to that movie, like the executive board, because like they just disappear for like bits near the end,
and then
they
he
just
like
pop back up, and they're like, "Hey, we're Mattel."
yeah.
But yeah, I did. So I will say I did see I watched your Oppenheimer video review, but I saw both of your Letterboxd reviews for them. And I know you weren't as hot on Barbie. And I think you, because well, I don't want to mince your words, but it's like you were kind of taken aback by the like the advertisement angle or something of it. Yeah.
I think that's always part of these commercial product movies, that it's almost inextricable. They can't get rid of them. And as I said, about 30 minutes in the movie, I hadn't heard the word Mattel that many times in my life. And then in the movie, it's 40, 50 times, and you see it on screen. So it's hard to avoid the fact, okay, they're advertising a little bit for this.
Sure.
And by the end, Barbie is, I feel like, reaffirmed, and then they throw the products, like no, I'm not saying it's just a commercial and that's all, but they throw the outfits on the screen, like, here's this outfit and that outfit.
Oh, yeah, no, where they literally do that, yeah.
Yeah, they do it 5 times, and it's copyright restricted, so you can't use this and then they chose to show Mattel. Here's the corporation. They put them as bad guys, I suppose, but it's hard for me to not see it as a little bit of that. And of course, we've had a lot of commercial product movies recently. It's been around for a while, but in spades. And I don't know if you guys know this. I said this. You probably read it, but Mattel is making 45 movies and TV shows about their stuff. So you're gonna get an Uno movie, and you're gonna get I don't know, whatever they make. They're gonna make 45. Like they're trying to become the new Marvel or whatever.
We're gonna get one where
Uno
Ken is.
movie.
We're gonna get one where Ken is assassinated on live television.
Yeah. I'm trying to. What are the other Mattel board games? I mean, you can't beat Clue, the Tim Curry, Michael.
Oh
Keaton,
yeah, I
like,
guess that's right. Yeah, that is a board game movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
But man,
Just
that
like
one.
The Skip Bo movie, the
Skip
Bo movie. I don't.
yeah.
Apples.
Shoots and
I don't know.
ladders.
I'm looking at stuff. Yeah, so you had that, but then you had this sort of, and I've been exposed to this for 20-some years, being in the university setting with like this sort of really dumbed down cultural Marxist stuff. So you have both at the same time. Like they want to have both. They want to be corporate capitalist and let's honor Barbie and she's beautiful. Let's cast Margot Robbie, but then they have patriarchy bad sort of stuff. And it's which one it wins in the end? I don't know. I think it feels like the people making the movie were confused. I wish the aesthetic of the movie would have dominated, and that could have been sort of the leading aspect of it, because it was really interesting. The Toyland, Barbie Land, you don't really see that. I can't remember. It reminded me, and this is going to take me way back. You guys may be too young, but Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh, no.
See that TV show?
Oh yeah.
I watched that before school every
like
morning. Come on.
Preschool, quirky, weird look. It didn't look like Pee-wee's Playhouse, but it had that sort of vibe to it. And
Sure.
I did kind of enjoy that, but then I had all this kind of dumbed down pop culture 101 sort of stuff that I wish it was just a Barbie adventure movie. Barbie is a character. Like, here she goes on an adventure, and we don't have to talk about all kinds of cultural symbolism. Maybe that's just me, but it wouldn't have been appropriate. I'd take my daughter to it. It wouldn't have been appropriate for her because she's like, she wouldn't care about that stuff.
Sure.
That's like 70% of the movie.
I feel like that's become kind of what like Pixar does now, where there was such a strong reaction in like millennial people of like Toy Story, where it's like it's a kids movie, but there's like jokes that older people can appreciate, and because like my dad constantly will say, because when Toy Story originally came out, my dad didn't go. He was like, you can take the kids, you can go see Toy Story, like whatever. I like, it's a kids movie. And then we got it on VHS and we watched it as a family, and my dad was like laughing his ass off. He loved it. He thought it was so funny. And so it's like, Pixar has this reputation of making movies that are like they're kids movies, but they have these things that adults can appreciate. And I feel like I enjoyed Barbie. I enjoyed some of the humor in it. I thought Ryan Gosling's character was really, really funny.
Yeah.
But
that's my
I'm
favorite
watching
part.
it. It's like PG-13, and there's like these extended scenes of like talking about like the patriarchy, or like America Ferrera's 2 to 3 minute long like huge monologue about like the inconsistent standards that women are held to, which is like, I agree with all of these things. Like I was like, that's a good point, I guess. But this is the plastic doll Barbie movie for ostensibly children. So it's just like, I don't know if it necessarily works as a kids movie, because like there were like a bunch of little kids at the screening all dressed up, and then it's just like
Yikes.
you have these like heartfelt scenes that are aimed towards like millennial people our age.
Yes.
Where it's just like, I don't know if this would resonate very well with children who are like the primary consumers of Barbie.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel similar of like, just who exactly is it for, except for like, as far as like the market, like the Barbie aspect would, because like for me, I had zero interest in this until then I was like, okay, it's Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. I'm like, that's interesting. And then I watched the trailer and I was like, okay, that's interesting. So it's this really weird thing where like, you're totally right. It is a product first movie, but I came into it from I like these filmmakers standpoint. So me watching it, it's almost like I was completely oblivious to the marketing aspect. Like you're or like reading your review, or like you're just saying now, like, they do say Mattel a lot, but in me, it was like, I only thought of them as characters in the context of the movie. And it wasn't until the movie was over where I was like, oh yeah, like they're the bad guys, but they just made a shitload of money off of this movie too.
Yeah.
So I think in that, my sort of like ignorance is bliss mode kind of helped me enjoy the movie.
And that's it's better.
Experience.
Yeah, it's better to be ignorant.
Yeah,
right?
right. I think so. Yeah.
I will say, I had a moment after the movie where we all got out of the theater, and I was like going to use the bathroom, and I noticed that there was like a huge line for the ladies' room, and there wasn't a line for the men's room. And I really wanted to just walk by and be like, Ken. Just got to walk right on in. Like,
I will say that the Matchbox 20 needle drop is like one of the like hardest I've laughed at a movie in like recent times. That was great. That was such a good like pull.
So, okay, I don't want to keep. We can go on forever about this. Matchbox 20. I've always hated that song.
No, I do. Hate it. That's why it's perfect.
I don't understand how that's like indicative of bro culture, or like these masculine ultra. Play Metallica. Like, what is what would a tried and true patriarch play? Right, Master of Puppets. I don't know. I thought it was funny. I do agree with that, but I hadn't heard that song in like 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's why it was so perfect. It's like, have you seen? I don't think the other guys have. I think I mentioned it before. Have you seen The Death of Dick Long by Daniel Scheinert? So it's about these two, like, not like redneck dudes, but Midwest, like, well, dudes from where we live really, but kind of rednecky dudes, and the soundtrack to the movie is like their soundtrack, and it's all like. It's like Nickelback, Creed, Stained, and it's like it's perfect. Yeah. It's like people in my town. That's what they listen to still, and that's what that Matchbox. It made me think of The Death of Dick Long, and like that's just like a perfect kind of like dude bro like soundtrack.
It's like a guy goes to a party and sees an acoustic guitar, and he's like, oh yeah, let me play that.
And that's why, because they do that in the movie. Yeah, it's perfect for that. Yeah.
Or they're because they're like trying to trick all the Kens, and they're like, oh, you've never seen. I mean, it is a little low hanging fruit. I was like, oh, you've never seen The Godfather? He's like, do you want to watch that? And I talk about it the whole time we watch it.
Yeah.
So it's like there's kind of like little meta jabs like that. Like there's definitely. I'm surprised they didn't mention like. It's like, oh, Ken, get a Letterboxd account, or
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm curious what y'all's like relationship is to Barbie before this movie. Like did you ever play with Barbies as a kid, or like did you ever have exposure to like the Barbie
my sister
universe?
had them.
Yeah,
I
same.
feel like maybe I had, like once in a great while, I would, play Barbies with her for a little bit. The only one that really sticks out to me is one of my earlier short films we made for public access TV was called "Oh Barbie, Where Art Thou?" And it's where we used two like Barbie dolls, and it was not stop motion because we just like pulled them on strings when we needed to move them, but it was like we used Barbie dolls and they were like in a concentration camp.
Oh my god.
And basically they try to escape, and then it ends with us capturing them, and then Travis, my brother, shoots them with a 20 gauge shotgun.
Oh my god.
So there's
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Little very, very checkered history with Barbie.
That was we were totally like Ken mode in that shooting that movie for sure.
Yeah. My sister had some, and like very much like Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie. My sister didn't like deface them in that way, but I will say most of her Barbies were like naked, constantly doing the splits, like strewn about the room. So that's like my memory of that.
Yeah.
I have no connection to Barbie. No sister. My daughter never had one. I've only seen him in the toy aisle, really.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was good that they tried Barbie. We've had Marvel and Transformers and everything else that I played with as a kid.
Yeah.
So many of these movies. But none of them, I can't think of one that tried to do the meta-cultural analysis of Transformer symbolism
That'd be
and culture
insane.
and put that in. It's just a Transformer story. Now they go blow stuff up at the end of the movie.
They're cool
Marvel's
cars.
the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much of that. So, was that? It's in Bart. That's a lot of this movie is that just that analysis of the symbolism. Which
I need the next
for a
Transformers
reason.
movie where Bumblebee tells us about toxic masculinity. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Or the Transformers are causing climate change. That sort
Yeah.
of talking.
oh, I like that. Like we have to decommission Optimus Prime because my carbon footprint. And he like looks at his foot, and it's like a car. He's like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, I guess the only like, and I mean this isn't as explicitly just for boys as Barbie is implied, like just for girls sort of thing. But like the Lego movie is kind of has some little heavier sort of themes later on. That's like the kind of headier like other side of the coin. If you're going with like toy aisle, borderlines of like Barbies is for girls, Legos are for boys. These are their movies. But I mean, apparently, I feel like the movies both aren't as segregated in that way. Barbie is doing like crazy good right now, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's like it either is or it's like on track to be like the biggest movie of this year if it kind of continues.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I was
Did you
told,
guys see here? This is weird. Oh, sorry. This is. I saw the story about them. Maybe this is too esoteric, but slipping in the 9-line map.
Oh
which showed
my
China
God.
owning this stuff. And I'm watching the movie. I totally missed it in the movie. I didn't even know it was there.
Okay.
And I went back and saw the screenshot and like, why is this in the movie at all? Like, it has no reason to be in there other than maybe to appease China. And then are the Chinese watching Barbie? And because of this map, I'm not very.
I think
that's so weird.
It feels like such a far-fetched pull for me. It seems so. I watched that, and then apparently it's not even 9 dashes. Like if you count it up, it's only 8. So like the claim is just totally
What is this? I'm unfamiliar with this.
So they have this, and this has been in several movies where you show a map of Southeast Asia, China, And what does China own Taiwan? Is Taiwan Chinese?
Yeah, it's basically like the real world map or the real world equivalent is that there. It's basically a border, like a map borderline of showing China's ownership of the sea, whatever it is, and Taiwan is part of that. And the maps always use 9 dashes, so just to for the borderline.
So it makes it look as if China owns all these countries, and these countries get pissed and ban the movie. So Vietnam, I think it was Vietnam, banned Barbie because of the maps in there. But as I said, I didn't even notice it. It's just in the background in one scene.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It seems like such an, and it's the crayon drawing that Weird Barbie like pulls down of like, this is the real world, and it's all like the weird maps, and it just says Asia, and then there's like a dashed line out. It's not like a circle like it is on the actual thing. Yeah, but it's just like a dash out, and it's like, oh, it's the 9 dashes. It means that.
Wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's like that movies have been altered to appeal to like Chinese audiences, like in a lot of like Disney movies, like even if there's like any like same-sex characters like being intimate or kissing or anything. Like, I mean, that was like a big, I think it was in like a Star Wars movie, like in the Chinese version they removed like characters like 2 women kissing in the background. So it's like when they make these movies, like international audiences are in mind, and like China is a huge market. So that's probably what gives legs to that sort of like, oh, did they put the 8 dashes or the 9 dashes? What are they trying to say? That's wild. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so the article, there's a bunch of them, Vox.com, right? How Hollywood appeases China explained by the Barbie movie. And it has this Vietnam banned Barbie over a map. Like, okay, I missed this entirely while watching the movie. I'm glad people are very upset about a Vietnam banned Barbie.
Yeah.
Wild.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So, like, what about the story? Like, did you like it? Was it a fun, interesting story? I was told that when I watch it, I'm gonna cry at the end. So, like, do you agree with that sort of sentiment?
It definitely gets there. I know like the parts. I don't think it. To me, and like Kali even said this afterwards. She's like, I think it's more. Basically, it's more for the girls. It's definitely more of like mother-daughter relations sort of thing. But like, I still like vibed with the ending, but it didn't make me teary-eyed. And I think it was kind of like a little disconnect, but it's not like I'm like complaining or critiquing the movie for that. I'm just like, yeah, it's not for me, and that's okay.
The story is the Matrix in part. It's the Barbie land, that's reality, but no, it's not. There's a real world. There's even a scene where character gives Barbie 2 choices, and they make the Matrix, red pill, blue pill. Barbie goes to the real world, comes back, but Ken infects Barbie land with his ideas of the patriarchy he gets from the real world. But then I think the end, I'm not giving much away, maybe I am, but Pinocchio comes up somewhat. Like, will she become real? Right? What is a real woman? That sort of thing.
Yeah. But I think.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think what affected me, and I think, and maybe this is like a fault in my mind palace fortress. There's like there's cheat codes to get me to like get teary-eyed. But if you put like any sort of like melancholy music to like archival footage of like people when they were kids, that will. I mean, we saw After Sun.
I knew you were gonna bring up After Sun.
I don't. After Sun. Have you seen that?
No.
Have you, Josh?
Yeah. So the flashback scenes of, is that what you're referring to in Barbie?
It's like at the very end when she's talking to.
Are there montage
Rhea
scenes?
Perlman?
Yeah.
And it's shots of like like daughters and their mothers, kind of like intercut with just different like that sort of like because that's a theme throughout the movie where it's like her daughter grows up and doesn't play with Barbies anymore and starts to resent her mother for being corny or cheesy, and she's trying to develop, she's trying to get her own identity, and her mom is like kind of stuck to the past, like, oh yeah, no, you're my little girl, like that kind of idea. So like having that in there, and then showing like that sort of innocence of like being a child, and especially doing it like that, like VHS, filming kids when they were younger type of like nostalgia thing. It got me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'm glad you guys were affected by this. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I was the only dude in my movie theater.
You said you were the only dude in your theater?
I think I was. I went to 11:30, and there's a bunch of young girls and a bunch of girls. I'm a single guy, 43, walking in there. Like I'm sure they wondered why I was in there.
We've had both, like, because I'm working at our local theater for the summer, and we've had both ends of the spectrum where this guy comes in with like his 4 kids, and he says I'm getting 5 tickets, and then like they order concessions, and then we get back to him, and he's like, okay, so that's 5 tickets, and he goes, no, 4. I'm not going to see the Barbie movie. I'm not gay. It's like,
holy shit.
Okay, dude.
Whoa.
Come on, man.
But then on the other end, which is like, I think is like so heartwarming, is like seeing, like, we've had a bunch of like dads come in with their little girls, and they're both like dressed in pink,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love that. I love seeing that. That's kind of affects me more than the ending of the movie itself. Is just kind of, I think that's like really, really touching, seeing that stuff. But yeah,
where we saw it, there were definitely like families where like the dad was wearing like a Hawaiian shirt like Ken does in the movie, so it's like, and they have like young children, so I was like, okay, that's good.
Yeah, like I said, I was there for the ride. It didn't make me teary-eyed or anything, but yeah, I would say the ending affected me a bit. Even
I
though,
like that in a movie. I like to feel emotions when I watch a movie.
Yeah, that's a dig at Network, I think.
Yeah.
Damn.
It is kind of.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah. Okay. All right. Do I call that good? Was there any other, like, kind of feel good about that? Do we want to move on to
Yeah.
closing down? Okay. All right. So I'll pull next week's movie out of the cup, and then we're gonna do our outros and everything. So next.
You randomly draw this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so that list, like the short list that I gave you,
Yeah.
those are just ones that are in here. Oops, and one just came out.
One just fell out. Is that the one?
Ooh, this will be interesting. It's Network. No. That is in here, so I will be pulling that at some point and just throwing it away. But no, from 1998, directed by Alex Proyas. We'll be watching Dark.
That's one of my favorites.
Dark what?
Say it again.
City.
Dark City. Sorry.
Dark City.
My voice cracked, so I was trying to say it more.
I almost want to come back for that. That's I love that movie, and I'm sure some people will hate it. So there you go.
Yeah.
By the way, that movie, when you watch it, it may not anymore have the record for the shortest shot length in a movie. So like the shot is like 1.8 seconds per shot. It's just boom, 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 boom.
Really?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. You watch it and you'll see that.
I've seen it once, and I think in high school. I remember digging it and really digging the creepy aesthetic of the whole thing.
Weirdest spaceship in any movie, probably, or it's very strange. Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. Dark City. If you don't want to be spoiled for it, it is available for rent on YouTube, Amazon, Apple TV, a few others. So watch it, one of those, before next week's episode. These episodes come out every Wednesday at 7 p.m. EST. on Twitch and YouTube in video form, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more in audio form. We also have social pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And with all that said, well, I guess before we get to our things, I'll thank our guest Josh again for coming on. I enjoyed the discussion and the movie. Okay, so now with all that said, I'm mad as heck, and you know what? I don't think I'm gonna take it anymore. I'm TJ, aka J Spot Jack Cheese, and with me as always,
I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisy of our times. Nick, aka Dr. Funk on Twitch, and with me as always.
As always, I'm your communist guerrilla fighter sitting in a room talking about a contract for a fucking TV show. Moose, aka Tommy. And with me, our special guest.
I'm Josh Matthews. What do I do? I'm on YouTube. Learning About Movies is the channel. I release at least one video a week, if not two. I don't know. And I'm on Letterboxd, but I can't remember my name. I'll look that up. But Josh Matthews, I think, is what it is.
I believe
I'm on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter, but Substack is where I've been trying to write every now and then. So check me out on there. I appreciate it. You guys are delightful. This is fun.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
so
feel
much.
anytime. I feel like we love having guests, so.
Yeah. Honestly, you say you want to come on for Dark City. If you can, feel free to come back on for Dark City. Yeah.
Hey, it's my summer. I'm at leisure and away, and
yeah,
I love that. I love the movie, or I always have. So I might actually do that. Feel free to email me.
Okay.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
We'll
Sounds
stay in
good.
touch. That'd be sick. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So until next time. Bye-bye.
Until next time.
Bye.
See you again.